Thanks, Mike. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really happy to speak to you. You were one of the first people that I came across in the conspiracy commentary scene that I felt actually understood the culture that I was a part of for so long. I just want to say first, I respect your knowledge and most of all, admire how you talk about conspiracy theorists without ridiculing us. And I've been thinking for ages, man, I'd really love to have a chat with you. So really, thank you so much for being here.
Well, that's so cool. That's great to hear. And one of the things in writing about all of this stuff, sort of before it got really mainstream, is that you start to see this as a real niche culture or niche culture. And you really want to understand why people flock to these things and what draws people to these kinds of theories. And when you start to understand why people are drawn to things like chemtrails or the moon landing was fake, or, skip ahead to QAnon, you start to realize that everybody's kind of the same and everybody is looking for the same things and has a need to feel important and listened to and like they're part of something bigger than their own life. And when you realize that, the urge to ridicule the people who believe these things kind of starts to go away, even if the ideas themselves are worthy of scorn. And certainly the people who have made a lot of money promoting them, those are people I will never stop ridiculing. But the people who believe it, I feel like we can do better than that,
Same. I think there's a difference between influencers and believers.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so your book, The Storm is Upon Us, is being released soon as paperback.
Yes.
And basically, I would say it is the book on QAnon. For anyone, if they want to know what it's about, just read that book. But Q is obviously a very current phenomenon. And from listening to some of your interviews, I know that Q was not your introduction to conspiracy culture.
So definitely not.
What was your introduction and how did this interest start?
Sure. So I've always been interested in conspiracy theories as stories. Mm-hmm. Going back to when I was in college, I spent a lot of time listening to Coast to Coast AM, the Art Bell radio show, where he would be on overnights talking about UFOs and crop circles and futurism and, the face on Mars and all this stuff that people that I knew just didn't talk about that stuff. That was the domain of what we thought of as crazy people. And I was very interested in it because it was like a window into a whole different world and a whole different culture and a whole different set of books and the growth on the internet, which was going on very quickly, even as most people were very slowly adapting to it. I never really believed any of it, but I was always fascinated by the psychology of it. And I, skip ahead maybe 10 or so years, and I started writing for the blog of the critical thinking podcast Skeptoid. And over a year and a half, I got to write every week on some different scam or hoax or fraud or something else that was going on in the culture. And that was where I was introduced to some of the precursor scams that led up to Q. So when I write in the book about things like the Iraqi dinar scam or Nasara, those were things that I found way before Q ever started. I was fascinated by the Iraqi dinar scam going back to maybe 2014 when virtually nobody knew what it was. I was like, why aren't people talking about this more? This is a huge thing going on in a very small subculture, but it's taken over these people's lives. So when QAnon started to bubble up, I was kind of prepared for it because I had knowledge of some of these other kind of intel-driven scams like Nasara and Omega and some of these other things I wrote about in the book.
Mm-hmm. So back to the coast to coast stuff. What year was this? Because I want to put it in context to where the truth movement was at that time.
Oh, sure. This was pre 9/11. This was
really?
I was in college in the late 90s, and I got really into it maybe around like 1998 or 1999. And I remember the one story from that time that really sticks out to me is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, Richard C. Hoagland.
Yeah.
You're familiar with him?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so he was, Art Bell would have him on all the time. And I was fascinated by this guy because he was a total amateur. This is the guy who created the face on Mars hypothesis.
Yeah.
Thought there were ancient civilizations on Mars and they left their ruins behind and NASA was covering it up. And fascinating guy. And he's still around. He's still doing podcasts. I listen to him once in a while. But he came up with this theory that NASA had purposefully shut down one of its own satellites to stop knowledge of an alien landing that was going to be going on in sort of a far-flung part of Arizona in late 1998, I think it was. And Art Bell had him on like every night for a week, and his website was churning out updates from the landing site and like all these things that were going to happen. And you could tell because of where the stars were, and they were pointing toward, the pyramid on Mars, and it was aligned to the pyramid of Giza, and like mind-blowing stuff, full of just ridiculous gibberish details. And of course, nothing happens. So then immediately you've got the retcon, you've got what actually was supposed to happen was the test of a weather weapon. And you could tell because it was snowing in this weird part of Arizona where it doesn't snow very often. And I remember even Art Bell going like, there's nothing happening here. Like, why are we even talking about this? But I was just like, for some reason, and I haven't been able to find those shows. A lot of Art Bell's stuff was kind of snuck onto YouTube, but I haven't found those shows, and I hope to hear them again one day and see if they match up with my memories of them from 25 years ago. But that was what really stuck out for me, that conspiracy theories could be a vehicle for storytelling. It could be a vehicle for sort of filling up a notion with details and getting people to run with it. I mean, there was no social media then, but you had Usenet groups and Yahoo groups and bulletin boards. And of course, this stuff was all being published on this guy's website, which has not been updated in terms of its look since the late 90s. And it's this sort of fascinating time capsule to when this culture was a lot more fun and a lot less dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. So you saw it progress onto the internet. And as you were saying about storytelling, I've been playing with an idea of like this being like urban legends.
Yeah.
That carries on, like that we're
sure.
telling each other, but now it's over a digital age. You have basically been there since the late 90s then, watching this kind of community grow?
Yeah, on and off. I mean, for a while, I wasn't paying attention to it because there wasn't much going on. The 9/11 truth movement never really interested me that much.
Right.
After, 7 or 8 years of the same arguments, you're like, okay, when are we going to get over this?
Yeah.
But when I started writing for Skeptoid, that was maybe like end of 2012 or beginning of 2013. And it wasn't quite as mainstream even then, but you were starting to see glimmers of it bubbling up into the mainstream. And one of the things that I found was my first introduction to the Iraqi dinar scam. I'd never heard of it. I knew nothing about it. But on Twitter one day, I saw, I think it may have been a national trending hashtag, was hashtag release the RV. And I was like, what is that about? What are we talking about? Like a recreational vehicle here? Like what is this? What I found in digging into it was that the RV was the revalue of the Iraqi dinar, when the worthless dinar is going to suddenly magically be revalued to be on par with the dollar. And then I found that there was this whole community of people who bought millions of dinars waiting for the revalue to happen that would make them millionaires. And I'm going, how does anybody think that this is a real thing? That's not what money does. If that were to happen, if hundreds of billions of worthless dinars were suddenly worth not even $1, but 10 or 15 cents, you would have financial calamity. You would have a hyperinflation that would be overnight. Now, there are certain things where a currency can be redenominated, where they will chop zeros off of a currency and reprint the paper money. That does happen. That's happened in Japan. It's happened in Brazil a couple times. That's a real thing, but that's not what these people were talking about. These people were talking about a way that they would become instant millionaires. And I'm going, what is all of this? Is this even legal? And the structure of it was so defined. There were so many different ways for people to get dinars and to get information about dinars, but the people selling the dinars couldn't market them as an investment, and the people who were talking about them as an investment couldn't sell them. And I was just completely fascinated by this. But this was a very quick kind of bubbling up into the mainstream of this culture. And of course, now, less than 10 years later, this completely dominates social media. It's impossible to stop it from bubbling up. But I was sort of watching it while it was very very slowly starting to happen. And there were just glimmers of how far this could go in mainstream culture.
Yeah, there was a lot of conspiracies around money. I think that's probably because it's something that your lay person doesn't really understand.
Yeah, lay people don't understand finance. You get this all the time in Rothschild family conspiracies. Now, that's the book I'm working on right now. And one of the big conspiracy theories that's gone around about the Rothschilds for over 100 years is that they control all of the world's central banks. Well, central banks are by definition run by a government. There are no private owners of central banks. I mean, there's some banks where you could have bought stock in a central bank, but that hasn't happened in a long time. And that's not really what these people are talking about anyway. They're talking about one family controlling all of the banks in all of the countries except 5 or 7 or 9 or Cuba or North Korea or Iran. And now, don't you notice how those are always the countries we're at war with? And like one of the countries on this list is Iceland. And like, I guess I missed the Great War with Iceland that we were in. But it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how finance works. And because finance is complicated.
It is.
It's extraordinarily complicated. I'm reading a bunch of books about the Rothschilds. I'm like, I don't understand this stuff. How am I supposed to get anybody else to understand it? If your worldview depends on not understanding certain things, well, you're not going to understand them. And you're going to propagate these theories based on your very misguided and wishful thinking influenced version of how these things work. So yeah, financial scams are always going to work because people don't understand how finance works, and everybody wants to be rich without doing any work for it. That's why Nigerian prince emails still work.
Yeah.
They you send out 1 million of them, and even if 99.99% of them get deleted immediately, well, that's still 100 or 1,000 people that you've got on the hook for a potential scam. So it plays into the very basic nature of people and wealth, and you'll never go broke doing it. Now, you might get arrested, but you won't go broke.
Yeah, there's an interesting link there between pyramid schemes and cults and then conspiracy theories.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing. It's the same needing to belong, mistaking detail for profundity, wanting to be part of something. And the subculture, the jargon, the terminology really sucks people in because you feel like you're part of a movement that other people don't understand and that other people don't want to understand. Well, you understand it. And those other people, those are the crazy people. Those are the people who don't want in on this amazing thing that I've found. And why wouldn't anybody want to be a part of it? Just send in some more money so you'll get some more information. It'll be even better. It's a kind of basic exploitation of human need. And it's very sad to watch.
Yeah, like myself, like I was a conspiracy theorist. I'm not sure if you've looked at my story or not.
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
I have.
Like from 2003 till 2018. And I gotta say, like looking back at it, I was pretty naive. There's things I didn't understand. And then there's this professional looking guy in front of me in a suit telling me it's this way.
Right.
And he's trying to expose a lie. So why shouldn't I believe him? Why would he be lying to me if he's exposing?
Right.
And so we fall for these things.
Yeah, we fall for these things because they sound like things that we already believe. Yeah. And they promise us answers to the questions that we've had all our lives. One of the really popular QAnon videos is this one called Fall of the Cabal. It's this 10-part series. Very slickly edited. Yeah, very slickly edited, very shareable. And one of the first lines in the voiceover of the first part of the video is, do you ever wonder why you feel like you can't get ahead? Well, that's everybody, or almost everybody. Almost everybody has a moment of, I can't get ahead. I can't shake off living paycheck to paycheck. I just can't get out of my debt. I can't figure it out. So right there, you're tapping into something that almost everybody feels. Yeah. And if you do that with a slick video that pretends to offer easy answers to difficult problems, that's going to go viral. That's going to hook people because it offers you something that you want and that you feel like you need and that will help you. And then you slip in the anti-Semitism, then you slip in the racism, then you slip in the scam. You can't hit people with that right away. But if you work them over enough, you can get people to do anything.
Yeah, that follow the cabal is like the zeitgeist of QAnon beliefs.
Totally. That's the same why some of the zeitgeist worked, or why loose change worked.
Yeah.
It's presenting the conspiracy as a story, and it's a story that you want to know more about. And it's how you are personally part of this and how you figured out what's going on. And you're smarter than the people who did this. And it's very compelling. It's not at all, it's not unknowable why people fall for this stuff.
Well, it taps into that feeling of life's not fair and there is like real world corruption going on. It's out of your hands, which kind of brings me to a different question I had for you. Like there's this part in your book, Storm is Upon Us, that I find it's really important to try and talk about here on my channel and in my podcast.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And that was how you explained the difference between real conspiracies and conspiracy theories. Could you expand on that?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I get all the time is, well, are you saying there are no conspiracies? Or somebody sends me a list of, 17 conspiracy theories that came true. And the dividing line for me is, yes, of course there are conspiracies. A conspiracy is just people agreeing to do something that is potentially illegal.
Yeah.
Going all the way back to the assassination of Julius Caesar, that was a conspiracy. The assassination of Abraham Lincoln, that was a conspiracy. There was a conspiracy to kill the vice president and the secretary of war at the same time. Those happened to fail, and the attack on Lincoln succeeded. The cigarette companies conspired to keep data about cancer from the public. These are real things. Chemical companies conspire to dump their waste in our water. Those are real things. All of those are real. I would never say that those are not real. We know that those things happen. I certainly don't think politicians always have our best interests in mind. I certainly don't think the financial industry always has our best interest in mind. That's ridiculous. The line I'm drawing is that there are no popularly theorized conspiracies that later were found to be true. The conspiracies that were uncovered were not in the popular consciousness. They were put in there because they were revealed by a whistleblower or by FOIA documents or lawsuits or
investigative
investigative journalism.
Yeah.
There was no conspiracy theory about MK Ultra until it was revealed by reporting and by government documents. Then you go back and say, well, what about the MK Ultra conspiracy theory? That came true. It was never a conspiracy theory. People didn't know about it until they knew about it. So that's the line that I always draw. And then when you get these kind of popular conspiracy theories, these things that people just sort of buy into and that have been around for a long time, if you look at chemtrails or the moon landing or even 9/11, the number of people who would be part of that, who would need to play some role in enacting that conspiracy theory is so enormous that you would never be able to keep it secret. If chemtrails are a real thing, if we're really being sprayed by commercial airplanes, how many hundreds of thousands of people have been part of that?
Yeah.
The people loading the chemicals, the people flying the planes, the people plotting out what's going to get sprayed. And of course, nobody ever can agree on what exactly is happening. What are they spraying? How does it work? How do they know it works? What is the desired outcome? If you have a conspiracy theory that relies so much on a giant mass of people keeping it secret and it being perpetrated for no particular reason that anybody can agree on, that's a good sign that what you're dealing with is a conspiracy theory rather than an actual conspiracy.
Yeah. I came out to my community and said, I no longer believe in the grand conspiracy. So that was like an Illuminati, New World Order, QAnon type belief of like a global cabal. That's the thing I said, I don't believe in that anymore. I don't think that's happening. There's like no actual proof. It's just a bunch of rubbish, basically.
Yes.
After 15 plus years of looking into this, I think I might know now this isn't real.
You've put the cost in and you go, nope, I'm done with this.
Yeah. And people throw it at me still. What are you trying to say? There's no conspiracies. What about this? What about that? And I didn't say that. I'm just saying there's no Illuminati. Like there are greedy people. There are corrupt people. That is just what it is.
And they do their conspiring in the open. They don't, they don't hide it. Yeah. Or they do, but they don't do it in a way that is immune to journalism or discovery.
Yeah.
And these people are generally not that good at hiding things and keeping secrets.
No. And I think it's really the way that these influencers frame it. Because I often hear things like, oh, have you heard about the Bilderbergs? No one knows what goes on in those meetings. And that's not true. Like, the minutes are released after the meetings. All of this is out in the open. There's nothing hidden, but the way the influencers are framing it to us is the reason why we fall for it.
Right.
You know?
Right. It's a secret. They don't want you to know. Well, actually, no, they put it out there publicly. It's just really boring.
Yeah.
I've read some of the Bilderberg group minutes. They're super dull.
Yeah. they're perfect bedtime reading.
They're perfect bedtime reading. They really are. Yeah. They're about like nothing interesting. It's just that you don't know who's saying what. So there's an air of mystery to it, but it's not mysterious. It's just people talking. And they happen to be doing it in a way that's slightly secretive.
All right. So we talked about fun ones and we talked about how they go bad. When did you notice the truth movement was making this change?
Yeah, it was kind of gradual, certainly with QAnon. You know, if you go back to something like the 9/11 truth movement, that was very publicly debated. You had a lot of celebrity 9/11 truthers. You had a lot of books about it. You had a lot of DVDs and things. But it started to peter out because at some point it's just, there's no new information. Yeah. You're going to have the same arguments about nanothermite and why didn't the passports burn and can jet fuel really do that? And it's like, after 15 years of arguing about the same thing, now you're just arguing to hear your own voice. But QAnon broke out in a very public way in less than a year. You know, you had this sort of growing subculture going on 4chan and then I guess on 8chan, and it was on Reddit, and it was on Twitter, but it was still like people didn't want to talk about it. Nobody in the mainstream media really wanted to hear about it. It was just a bunch of internet weirdos. And then in August of 2018, beginning of August, you had that Trump rally in Tampa. And I write about this quite a bit in the book because it was really a turning point for not just for QAnon, but for our popular perception of conspiracy theories. Suddenly, there were all of these people at this Trump rally screaming about Q and holding up signs with hashtag where we go one, we go all, and QAnon this and QAnon that. And the mainstream media is like, what is this QAnon thing? What was this crazy thing that all these Trump people were talking about? And then, of course, they wrote it off as just a crazy thing Trump people were talking about. But for me, it was like, oh, you're giving these people positive coverage. You're talking about this thing in a way that doesn't really add any understanding to it, but gives a lot of oxygen to it and adds to the persecution complex that these people already have. These people already think the liberal media looks down on them. The liberal media does look down on them. So now you're fueling their sense that they're part of something special that the leftist media and the leftist politicians don't want you to know about. And suddenly I'm getting this real sense that this is becoming a very public movement before anybody really understands what it is and knows how to talk about it. And then, of course, it broke out hugely in 2020 with the pandemic. And suddenly everybody is locked inside. Everybody's looking for answers. Everybody's stumbling on these very fringe conspiracy theories. You know, these 5G and Bill Gates, is going to kill us all with his vaccines and the anti-vax movement in general. This was still very, very niche. It was very much like internet weirdos and really rich moms in Orange County, California. And now it's suddenly everybody. And everybody's got some theory for what the hell is going on with COVID, who is really responsible for it, where it actually came from, what the point of it is. And when you fill people with those kinds of feelings and you don't give them an outlet other than the internet, you're suddenly going to have problems. And now it's everywhere. Now it is as mainstream as you can possibly get. To have people showing up at school board meetings screaming about ivermectin and the deep state. And, mainstream politicians talking about how, hey, we don't know for sure that the election wasn't stolen. There's no fear of being ridiculed when you talk about this stuff anymore, because now you know that everybody you talk to is going to believe something, some part of it. And unfortunately, it's just mainstream now. It is now in regular, polite discourse to talk about how masks are slave tools and hydroxychloroquine is the real cure and Trump is still the real president. There's no fear of talking about that in public anymore.
But as you know, all of these conspiracies are not new.
No.
They're all kind of based on older conspiracies. What is it that made this conspiracy become so popular? I've got one little theory.
Sure.
Because you point to hope being something that was different about QAnon. and the movements that predated it, which I agree. There were no heroes.
Yeah.
In my day, it was humanity was going to have to do the hard work, and there was no good Illuminati helping us. I feel like that's like what Q was trying to say, that there's a hero, you know, that people can rally behind. So when I was trying to wake people up, they didn't want to have nothing to do with it back in my day.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have I couldn't offer a solution. The solution was we have to bring these people down, you know, and now this has a hero. Is that maybe why it got so popular?
I think that's a big part of it. I think, you know, if you look at conspiracy literature of the past, you know, Behold a Pale Horse or the Protocols of the Elders of Zion or any number of things, it's always about what is being done by the powerful people. And here are all of their agents, and here are all the things they own, and here are all the ways they're going to destroy you. You know, own this book and be forewarned. You know, the closest you ever got was somebody like Bill Cooper, who would occasionally, you know, on his radio show say something like, you know, don't be in your house on a holiday because that's when the feds are going to come, when you're too sleepy from your Thanksgiving turkey to shoot back. But it was never like, here are the concrete steps that you can take that are not going to uproot your life, that are not going to turn you into an insane person, that are not going to make you build a bunker and fill it with guns and fuel. Here are things you can do. Q did that. Q offered you a way to be in the battle that was more than just own this book and less than buy 50 guns and own a compound. Because most people are not going to do that. No. But most people can make memes. They can decode Q drops. They can send articles to their friends. They can understand the hidden communication and learn how to crack it and come up with their own theories. You know, the brilliance of Q is something like, we are the news now, or, you know, we'll make our own documentaries. We'll make our own products. You know, we'll do it ourselves. And of course, there's a huge grift thread with that. You know, all these people are selling you products. And, you know, Alex Jones did that from the very beginning, you know, selling you products that are going to help you break the chains of deep state control. They're going to, you know, help keep big pharma out of your medicine cabinet and, you know, keep big food out of your refrigerator. And Q gave a very concrete way of doing that. It allowed you to be a digital soldier. It allowed you to be part of the fight in a way that past conspiracy theories really never did. And that, I think, is a huge part of what made it so popular. It was participatory. It was an interactive way to be part of the struggle against the deep state.
Yeah, absolutely. It's shocking to me because, like I said, I spent 15 years trying to wake people up.
Yeah.
And just felt like I was hitting a brick wall the whole time. And all of a sudden, like, Fall of the Cabal kind of comes out and it just wakes everyone up. And you're just like, what? Just at a time when I'm coming out of it as well.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing about sort of classic conspiracy theories. They don't really offer you anything. You know, the 9/11 truth movement, you know, the Barack Obama birth certificate movement, it didn't offer you anything. It was full of kind of chicanery and evil. And, I'm going to tell people about it. But what are they supposed to do about it? You know, if Barack Obama is really an illegitimate president who wasn't born in the U.S. and is a secret Muslim sleeper agent, like, okay, what now? I guess I got to go to work tomorrow. You know,
yeah.
I guess I got to buy groceries. But Q is like, this is going on, and here's what we do. Here's how we fight back, and our sacrifice is being acknowledged by Q, by Trump. You know, Trump would, you know, make his little air cues or pump his fists and point at people and like, we're winning, we're getting through. He sees us. That's what made Q so compelling, is that it offered people something.
Yeah, I'm thinking as well, like, it was one of the things that kind of started to politicize conspiracies again. Because in the 2000s, like when I was part of it, it was, you know, the main message was that the left and the right was the same thing.
Right.
Bush and Blair, Obama, David Cameron, they're all the same. It doesn't really matter. There is no real left or right. So it felt really non-partisan to me. And then, like, from, say, 2015 onwards, is when I started seeing like real far right and right wingers like take hold of conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
You know, and I was really shocked by it. But then, like, I look back at it now and I'm like, oh yeah, William Cooper obviously was. Alex Jones obviously was.
Sure.
You know, this all goes back to John Birch and all these other people that are like true conservatives. Did you also kind of see through the 2000s that it wasn't very politicized?
Yeah, something like the anti-vax movement was never political. A lot of anti-technology movements, anti-Wi-Fi, anti-smart meters, going back in time, anti-microwave ovens, anti-fluoride, all that stuff, that was not particularly political. Stuff like the Clinton body count was, but, even a lot of leftists hated the Clintons. They still do. Yeah. I've talked to plenty of liberals who can't stand the Clintons and can't stand Obama, can't stand Joe Biden. There was at least a lip service of, well, we hate both parties equally. You go, okay, well, that's at least, it's sort of non-political. But starting with the rise of Trump, you couldn't say that. You can say, well, we hate the Republicans too, because you worship a Republican presidential candidate. You worship a mutation of Republican politics. Now, maybe it's not the classic conservatism, and you've watched in the Trump years as these people have completely renounced small government, keep the federal government out of local politics. These people want a federal takeover of everything. They wanted Trump to rule by executive order. They want to abrogate the Constitution, all these kinds of things. But Trump was the focal point. Trump, who was never a Republican until he was, who was never conservative until he was, who did not live his life in a way that was particularly evangelical, had no real understanding of that culture, but he understood how to tap into it. He understood what these people hated, what these people feared. And the really crucial thing, and I think it was the real switch point from both sides are equally guilty to MAGA or die, was Trump presenting himself not as this is what they're doing to you, this is how you can fight back. It was us. It was they hate us. They're coming after you and I'm in the way. One of the Trump rallies in 2018, I'll never forget it. He was in, I believe it was North Dakota. And he was doing a midterm rally there, and he was talking about how they hate us. They're the elite. Well, we're the super elite. We've got the bigger boats. We've got the bigger apartments. We've got the bigger houses. We've got more money. And I'm like, this is North Dakota, dude. There is no us here. You wouldn't piss on these people if they were on fire. No. But somehow he has turned himself into a champion of the working man, of the forgotten, the hated, the non-listened to blue-collar guy who is being crowded out by progressivism. And I think you're seeing that right now in this fear of cancel culture. You're seeing a whole generation of white working-class Americans who suddenly feel like they can't live the way they used to. They can't worship the way they used to. They can't use words they used to use. They can't tell jokes they used to tell. Now they're trying to tell me that a girl can be a boy and a boy can be a girl, and I can't read these Dr. Seuss books, and I can't eat as much meat as I used to, and they're coming after me. And here is the only guy who's standing up for me. Now, again, never mind. Trump would never have anything to do with these people. These are the people he disdained. These are the contractors that he stiffed. These are the people who, after a rally, their community would get stuck with the bill, and he would never pay it. None of that mattered. What mattered was he is standing up for the way things used to be. Back when we could talk the way we wanted to, we could gather the way we wanted to. We didn't have to have a token black guy or a token Jewish person. Men were men, women were women. We knew what was going on. And that's a way of life that I think a lot of people want to go back to. Fortunately, our culture is really progressing from that, but it's coming at the expense of a lot of people who don't want it to. And that's where so much of what's driving popular discourse is coming from right now. That feeling of, we want things to be the way they used to be.
From my research that I do now, conspiracies have always been pushed by people that are against progressivism.
Sure.
If we go straight back to 1790s, Abbe Barrawell and John Robeson, they're writing against the left, basically, from the get-go. They form this whole Illuminati, Freemason conspiracy theory, and it's to smash the left. It's to smash progressivism. And it always seems to be like that throughout the ages, from them to the protocols, down to Nesta Webster, up to John Birch Society. All the same people pushing conspiracy theories to seem to crush progressivism.
Right. And it's recycling of tropes that work over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons why I was so hell-bent on writing a book, kind of pulling apart the pieces of QAnon, was because I wanted people to understand that there's very little here that's new. It's presented in a new way. It's presented with a very social media 21st century sheen to it. But really, this is old stuff. This is the blood libel. This is secrets of the Federal Reserve. This is the protocols. This is what they don't want you to know. It's 100 different things. It wasn't created in a back room at the Internet Research Agency by a bunch of Russian trolls. It's created out of human nature. It taps into the very basic things that drive us. It's always going to work. And it's always going to be very compelling to a certain group of people.
Especially in uncertain times.
Right. Especially in times when things are getting very strange, when a lot is going on, and it's very hard to keep up with it.
So the pandemic also helped to fuel all this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. The pandemic was a huge driver of this and a huge radicalizer of people who were maybe into some kind of fringe belief, but it wasn't violent and it wasn't particularly political. I mean, these are people who are maybe into new age healing concepts or, really into organic food or really into kind of a very intense yoga practice, or were very fearful of certain new technologies. Didn't want a smart meter in their home, were afraid that, Wi-Fi was making them break out in hives or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things are all gateways to just more conspiracy theories. Those doors just hadn't been opened until the pandemic. And suddenly, you got a whole cohort of middle class, upper middle class people who have nothing to do because they've maybe lost their jobs or they're working from home, can't see their friends, they can't see their family, they can't go anywhere. All you have is time on your hands. And if you are an empty nester, or if you are single and you don't have kids taking up your time, what else are you going to do? You're going to go down rabbit holes. You're going to be bored. You're going to be restless, and you're going to try to figure out what is going on and how this all happened. It is no surprise whatsoever that the conspiracy movement exploded into the mainstream consciousness because of the pandemic and because of social media.
Which takes me onto, the result of all of this, January 6th.
Yeah.
I saw recently that you submitted a written testimony to the January 6th Commission.
I did. Yeah. I've talked to staffers on the committee. I've given a written statement to them.
Yeah.
It was really a privilege to be able to do it. I know people are very impatient for things to happen. Unfortunately, one sort of side effect of QAnon is that you've had a very similar tendency on the left to be like, sealed indictments are coming. Trump's going to get arrested any day now. They're all going to go down. And I'm like, really? When have they ever all gone down in the past? like seriously?
Yeah.
But the January 6th committee really is being very thorough. And they're looking into the people they should be looking into. They're doing it in a way that is very detailed. And I'm only privy to a very, very small amount of it. There's all kinds of things I don't know. But I think the hearings are going to really be mind-blowing to people. And they're going to be presented in a very understandable way because there's so much information right now. And it's so hard to know what matters and what is just kind of unnecessary detail. And I really hope that the committee does. I think what the Mueller report and the Mueller investigation really couldn't do, which was take something extraordinarily complex and turn it into a compelling story. Yeah. And I hope that is what they're able to do. Yeah, January 6th was really the coming together of a lot of what I'd been afraid of for a long time. You had this stolen election industry that really started well before the election. It was a year before the election when Trump and his people are like, it's all rigged, it's all going to be phony. Trump was talking about the 2016 election being stolen, and he won the 2016 election. He's out there going, well, I actually won the popular vote. There were 3 million illegal votes in California that should never have been counted. He's complaining about the outcome of an election that he won. nobody should have been surprised at all that the effort to propagate a conspiracy theory that the election was stolen started a year before the election. And Trump was doing it, his inner circle was doing it, and Q was doing it. There was a year and a half of Q drops talking about how Joe Biden is decrepit, is basement bound, will never be the candidate. Well, then he was the candidate. Oh, he's a deep state puppet. He's propped up by Chinese money. He's never going to win. If he wins, it's because the election was rigged. He wins. Well, hey, we told you the election was rigged. All of it happened in a way that was entirely predictable. Trump surrounds himself with the dumbest, greediest people who will tell him anything he wants to hear so that these people can stay in his favor. And if they tell him something he doesn't want to hear, he gets rid of them. And hey, there's the MyPillow guy. There's Rudy Giuliani, who will do anything to be on camera. Here's Sidney Powell, who will do anything to give a nationally televised press conference. You get the worst people telling you the worst things, and you personally believe they're all true. It's no wonder that this culminated in a catastrophic act. And it's honestly a miracle that it wasn't worse, that there weren't members of Congress taken hostage, that there weren't more people killed. I really believe, and I may be in the minority about this, but I really believe that the delaying of the National Guard being called up saved lives, because there would have been shootouts. You would have had these rioters, who most of whom were told not to bring their guns to the rally. They would have gone right back to their cars, would have gone right back to the hotel rooms, gotten fueled up on God knows what, and just started shooting at people. And the National Guard's not going to let themselves get shot at. And these, certainly when you have a militarized National Guard policing a protest, that doesn't go particularly well. So to me, this was a coming together of various strands of professional conspiracy theorists, pissed off MAGA people, and a government that was just totally overwhelmed and had no idea what to do about this. And unfortunately, we still don't really know what to do about it.
I was sat here in England, absolutely shocked, just watching it live, just couldn't believe it. In fact, that's the day that I decided I should talk about my experience.
Oh, wow.
Because Ashley Babbitt being shot.
Sure.
The minute I found out that she was a hardcore QAnon believer, I looked at my partner and I said, that could have been us.
Yeah.
It could have been you.
Yep.
You and me could have been right there, because we believed in this. We didn't have, like I said, we didn't have the hero, but we did think a satanic cabal was basically running everything. Yeah. And if I was in her shoes, I would think, they're trying to take over this government. All these people are with me. Let's go do it. And, it really hit me that day. That death was I should maybe not turn my back on the truth movement and actually come in and try and talk to them, talk to other people, let people understand what it's like to be a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah. Why this stuff is so appealing and why it's so powerful. Yeah. I mean, it really, the thing that I worried about with QAnon for a long time, and I'm really still very concerned about this as it's gotten more mainstream, is you can't keep telling people that a cannibal pedophile cult runs the world and is doing horrible things to children and is doing horrible things to our government and is stealing all our money and is poisoning our food. You can't keep pumping that crap out year after year, decade after decade, and not expect somebody to say, I'm going to stop it. Yeah. Because if you know about pedophiles trafficking children and killing them in rituals, are you going to let that happen?
You would be a monster to let it carry on.
You would be just as bad as them if you let it happen. That was why this Pizzagate rhetoric was so dangerous. And this guy shows up at this pizza place with an AR-15. He's looking for the kids. It's a miracle nobody was killed. I've been, just recently, we were recording this in sort of mid-April 2022, and this grooming panic is going on in the US, screaming about how LGBTQ teachers are all, training kids to be gay, and they're coming after your kids and they're grooming them to be victims. I mean, never mind that's not at all how
completely ridiculous.
It's completely ridiculous. You can't turn somebody gay. Can't turn a child gay. But beyond that, the rhetoric is so overheated, and it is so primal of these people are hurting your children. They have to be stopped. Well, how do you stop somebody ultimately? You kill them. And my fear is that somebody or multiple people are going to be just murdered over this. whether it's a teacher, whether it's a Disney employee, whether it's a, same-sex couple with their adopted kids, you can't keep pumping this out there to violent, overheated people who own guns and are not afraid to use them. And then you say, well, whatever happens, I have nothing to do with it. You are throwing matches into a pool of gasoline.
Yeah.
And the fire is going to start at some point, and it's going to be terrible.
Someone's always going to get hurt. And it's happened multiple times. Even like Anders Breivik.
Yeah.
He believed in the cultural Marxism or the white replacement. And he went to the labor youth camp, to kill all the future generation of socialists. Yeah. These conspiracy theories are actually really, really dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, you can point at the exact same thing in the US with the abortion doctor, George Tiller.
Yeah.
Who every day, Bill O'Reilly's calling this guy Tiller the Killer and telling you exactly where he is and exactly what he's doing. And somebody kills him. And then Bill O'Reilly goes, well, I didn't say to do that. That's not what I meant. Okay. But nobody would have known who he was if not for you. And you have responsibility for this. And unfortunately, our laws struggle to keep up with what you do about this. And unfortunately, the social media platforms where this stuff is being disseminated are very, very slow to adapt to how it's disseminated. I talk about this in the book, that Facebook and Twitter let this go on for years.
Yeah.
Reddit's really the only good guy here because they banned QAnon in summer 2018. Everybody else, it took 2 more years of murders, of chaos, of mayhem, of radicalizing. And even then it was like, well, we can't make ourselves look like we're censoring conservatives. Why not? What is the harm of deplatforming harmful speech and saying, you can say this, but you can't say it here?
Yeah.
And I'm very pro deplatforming. I'm very pro removing these people from services. You're not silencing them. There is no First Amendment right to go on Twitter and call people pedophile groomers. There isn't. Sorry.
No.
If you don't like it, you probably wouldn't like it more in Russia or North Korea.
Yeah, that's real censorship.
Yeah.
When the government censors you, that's censorship.
Right.
What these people are getting confused with is being censored.
Right.
Right. You're not being censored, you're being censored.
Yeah.
We don't like what you're saying.
And you can't say it here. It is the same exact thing where a conservative would say, well, if you don't like the rules at the bar, start your own bar. If you don't like the terms of service from the software company, go somewhere else, start your own. I mean, that's what these people used to do. It used to be, if you don't like it, you take your business elsewhere. Yeah. You boycott, you shun. Now it's, we want everything controlled by the government, and we want everything to be allowed everywhere, and private companies have no rights. I mean, it's like stunning to watch the absolute inversion of conservative values.
Yeah. Well, you saying a minute ago, what we're going to do about it brings me perfectly to my final question.
Sure.
I network with a lot of other people in this anti-conspiracy, anti-disinformation community.
Yeah.
And this one is for them. Now, if you could give us all one piece of advice to keep at the front of our minds when we're making content, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a great question. God, that's a great question. I would say, and maybe this is because the book I'm writing right now is trying to condense like hundreds of years of information into a small text. But I went through the same thing with the Q book. Keep it as simple as you can. The more detail you load onto something, the more technical things get, the more opportunities you're giving people to get out of it, to glaze over and look at something else. I would say understand the audience, and that the audience does not understand the technical aspects of things, but wants to know why people believe this crazy crap and what they can do to get their grandma, their sister, their best friend, whatever, out of it. So just try to keep it as simple and on topic and as humane as you possibly can, and make it viral, make it shareable. So much academic writing on conspiracy theories. Like, I look at it, I'm just like, I've been in this culture for a long time and I don't understand this. And this isn't compelling to me. Technical reporting and like loading people up with details and trying to find like that first internet post where something really started. It doesn't always matter, especially something like QAnon. It doesn't, like, the name of the guy who typed the text into the box and hit post, it doesn't matter. It matters why this caught on. What about this is so appealing to people? What are you offering to people that their boring lives do not offer them? That's the thing that we need to understand.
That's the thing that will stop it from happening again.
That's the thing that will get through to people and help people realize, I don't want to go down this road. That to me is the only way, is to really keep it as simple and shareable and on topic as possible.
That's wonderful advice. Yeah, I try and keep in mind who my audience is for what video I'm making. Am I talking to conspiracists? Or am I talking to people that want to understand conspiracists? Those are my two types of audiences. So whatever video I'm making, that's what I'm trying to keep in mind. So I'll keep that in mind as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Yeah, I'm happy to. It's always great to be able to talk to somebody who was in this culture and understands it. And it's like we kind of almost have a shorthand where we can talk about things in a way that is a little more in depth.
Yeah.
But also, not getting sucked into the details, because with these kinds of conspiracy theories, the details don't matter. The bigger picture is what matters. And I think you get that. So
the social impact, really.
The social impact. Yes.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thanks. All right. Bye-bye.